Hi, I'm Kevin Greutert. I'm the director and editor of Saw X.
Hi, I'm Nick Matthews. Thanks for listening. I'm the cinematographer on Saw X.
I'm Anthony Stabley, and I am the production designer of Saw X.
Quick intro. It's July 27th, 2023. So we're gonna release the trailer to the world in 2 days, and so we have no idea what the response to the film is going to be. We have our hopes and expectations, but in any event, that's where we're at right now. We're very hyped because we just finished the final post-production process, and it's really great to be reunited in the room with these guys who I haven't really spent time with since we made the film. I can say that Anthony, as production designer, in a very general sense, created the environment. He found the locations. He built the sets. He designed the traps. And Nick not only did the lighting for and designed the camera work, but he actually operated the camera for most of the shots. So it's pretty exciting. What you're seeing on screen is their work in every way. So let's see. Anthony, you came on the movie. You went to Mexico City before I even did. So do you want to talk about what your process is and what that experience was going into it?
Yes. For me, traveling down to Mexico City and working with the crew down there and having the culture and the architecture, I just felt from the get-go that we had a winning situation because it was a fish out of water for John Kramer. And I felt with the crew and their ability that we were going to succeed in creating the United States portions, as well as having the exotic locales in Mexico City. And I just felt it was a wonderful opportunity for us to create this palette of the U.S. with the colder colors and the blues, and you can see that in the clothing, you can see that in the color selections, and then having that departure once we're in Mexico with the warmer tones, the greens, and then of course we have the traditional red, the blood, and this love for giallo films that we all share.
Yeah, no doubt. There's some great homage to that Italian period of '70s horror filmmaking. Nick, so I feel your personality in some of the camera work because I know you operated. The scenes that we're seeing right now in the hospital are fairly normal, but a lot of the film, you were holding the camera and you're walking around and kind of designing the shots, even though we planned a lot, but you were interacting with the actors in a way and doing the storytelling, with your operating, which I think is pretty fascinating. And I think you did a really amazing job.
Thank you.
How hard is it to do both the design of the camera work of the film and operating at the same time?
Yeah, I'm Nicholas Matthews, and I was a cinematographer. For me, I feel like it's a real honor and joy to be able to work intimately with actors, to gain their trust, to sort of experience the movie unfolding one moment at a time with these people. And so for me, actually, there's a lot that's intuitive about operating. I've just been doing it so long, and I love the dance between being in a space with somebody and experiencing something. And often I'm doing things that I'm not even thinking about, where it's like framing somebody against a backdrop in a certain way. I think because we'd had so many extensive conversations, there's a certain understanding of the world, there's a certain understanding of the story that we're trying to tell, and there's a certain intuition that you're able to bring to play. And an operator that shows up for one day or shows up on the movie just at that point, they don't quite understand the story you're trying to tell. And so while you're able to communicate that with really talented people, and we had some, because we did have a B camera operator, and we also brought in some people at a certain point in the movie, that we were able to talk to and oversee, and they eventually got the movie and what we were trying to do. There is a degree of just understanding who these actors are and what these characters are and what the story is. And I love that. I think it is very physically demanding, and it does kind of take two sides of your brain. But there's nothing quite like being in the moment with the blood, with the violence, but also with the jubilation and the intensity that these actors sort of bring to the table. So I actually love being able to do both.
I don't know how you do it, honestly. It's just because just being the cinematographer on a film is so hard. I really feel like you're the most active person on the set. Anthony, a lot of your work is done in preparation, and you aren't such a day-to-day person, or at least your job in general. But for you, Nick, I just don't get it. I don't know how you freaking pull it off, and it's also. It's also a collaboration with your assistant camera operator who's adjusting the focus. And on a film like this, that where we're using quite a few fairly long lenses that are much more sensitive in terms of the focus. That's an amazing team that you were able to find down in Mexico City. They did a really good job, I think. You can name names if you'd like, because they deserve it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had worked with I had done a movie in Mexico City before, and so I was able to actually pull some of those crew onto this project. And my ACAM first AC, Citlali Vargas, did an amazing job and brought together an incredible team. And, Edgar Luzania, who's my B camera operator and second unit director of photography on the movie, just had a jovial spirit and a can-do attitude, and these were all problem solvers and people who. One of my favorite things about our camera team is every Saturday they dressed up, and one of the days they all dressed up as Billy the Puppet, and that's the sort of shit that you're just like, I love working with people who are great at their jobs, passionate about what they're doing, and extremely technically proficient.
I got to say that everybody that we hired down in Mexico City was so enthusiastic and hardworking. Sometimes you encounter the jaded crew in other parts of the world, and it's not fun. So when you find people that are so incredibly engaged and excited about the project, I don't think anybody but me and Charlie Clouser, I think, were the only creatives that have worked on all the other films or any of the other Saw films. So for you guys to be able to walk into a strange city and find the crew and locations and the equipment to pull this off, it's pretty impressive. Anthony, you're from originally Bolivia, so you spoke the language here, and I'm sure that helped a lot, but also just your knowledge of Latin culture, I think, helped.
I think it helped a lot. I think when you put together crew, it's almost like you're casting, because you want to find people that are not only going to fit with the way that you work, but are going to have that enthusiasm for the film, especially horror movies. So in this case, I felt that Saw has a history, has a legacy, and the folks that we brought on, whether it's in the art department or other departments, they had this desire to work on the film. They wanted to be part of the history of Saw. They wanted to be part of the legacy. And from my own personal perspective, I felt really proud to be a part of this. And so when I approached my work and when we all collaborated, because that was a big deal, like that was one of the first sort of questions that you asked me as far as my ability to collaborate. I just felt like we did such a great job collaborating and working through the testing periods of the traps and all of that preparatory work. And then again, I do have to say the art department, we also have our prop department, our set dressers who are there day to day, and we're always working on what we're going to do that for the shoot. So I just think there was this massive enthusiasm, and it was part of what we did, and everybody wanted to not only do a great job for this movie, but they wanted to do a great job and say, we can do the best. This is the best that we could do. I just feel like we wanted to make the best traps. We wanted to do this, create this beautiful artwork. And I feel like we had a lot of pride in our work. So
that shows through in so many different ways. I saw it from both of you while making this movie, because Anthony and I stayed at the same Airbnb's location, and I saw you leaving at 6 a.m. every day to go in and to dream about what this world could be, and the sort of grit and darkness and the color palette that this sort of world could be. And from Kevin, I was, it's like, it doesn't matter what time of day or night, and I welcomed it, but it's like you were constantly thinking about, how do I make this movie better, and how do I enlist everybody in the process of making this. And you had so much prior Saw experience that you understood what we needed from the traps. You understood what could go wrong. You understood what we needed to test, and all the minutia that and detail that was essential in sort of telling that story. But on top of that, because you're an editor as well, and you have this really rich background, understanding cutting stories and designing, really taking charge of what a story can be, even in post, I felt like your approach to storytelling and your understanding of what you would need in order to craft the edit was just extremely helpful. And I just felt like it was a deeply collaborative process, in every way.
And I think there was a lot of preparation, not just from us, but from Kevin, because, the storyboards, going through investing in the storyboards was so helpful. As we went through the process, not just the traps, but everything that we were doing. And, and also you had this guidelines of us being in the period, prior to 2003 is what we were, in general terms, trying to shoot for. You can see that in the graphics when you see the computer work, you see it in the telephones, you see it in the picture vehicles. And also, I think the thing that's essential was that we came to you for guidance, because you had been through all of these other movies. So sometimes, whenever we're just creating ideas and we're sort of throwing stuff out there, it was great that you could hone us, just guide us through and say, hey, this is part of the Saw universe. This is consistently what we want to do. And I think I did see an interview maybe a couple weeks back where we were all in agreement. Basically, what we were trying to do is choose the best from the other movies. Aesthetically, from the art department, we would see, the rusty metal, the wood, the blades, et cetera, et cetera. We used this sort of iconic imagery and try to present that. And I think also our love for giallo lighting and the colors, and also some of the lighting that they had used previously that we liked.
Yes,
so basically, this was our
absolutely.
homage to 10 years of 20 years of Saw, or sorry about that. But, that's kind of what we were trying to do. We were trying to take the best ingredients and make this amazing film.
Yeah, and I got to say the process, like, obviously this is a hard film. All films are really hard to make, but from the very beginning, everything felt right. And we could talk about, not in detail, but we could talk about the hard parts where it did not feel right. But I can say that when the script was first given to me by Mark Berg and Oren Koulis back in January of 2022, I'd heard about it years before, what the concept of the movie was. And I was like, I don't know, really? John's cancer. And I just wasn't sold on the very sort of basic one-sentence version that I heard. And then when I read the script, I was like, holy cow, this is like really emotionally engaging and super smart in terms of how do we like really tell the full John Kramer story, and not resort to the same sort of flashback trickery that we had in the previous films. And I was really, really taken by it. And the process of doing the development that I wanted to do on the script went pretty darn smoothly. And then I was on a vacation with my siblings in July of last year, and Mark Berg called and said, what would you think about shooting the movie in Mexico City? Because it originally took place in Europe. And the instant he said that, I was completely captivated. I'm like, absolutely. Like, I had images of Aztecs cutting hearts out of people, and this sort of underworld of this giant megalopolis and all that. It was like, it seemed absolutely perfect. It seemed like the perfect way to make this movie really distinct. And as we started to work on the script and refine things that needed some attention, it all came together great. And then I got these guys on board and we went to Mexico. I feel like all the stars aligned. There was a very rough period before we began shooting where, it was a little bit chaotic trying to pull a film together in a strange city like this with a crew of people that had never worked together and had never worked on the Saw franchise. I can't believe I said that word. The Saw saga. It's not a business; it's an art. Because we had to make so many prosthetics for the actors, we're at a point in the movie where it's not apparent what that's all about. But in order to take an actor and have their leg get cut off, that requires weeks and weeks of planning. And Anthony, as production designer, is kind of in charge of wrangling the people that can get that sort of thing done. And as we got closer and closer to the start of shooting date, we realized we just weren't going to be ready. It takes weeks and weeks, and we weren't even cast on some of the critical roles that required prosthetics. So we almost fell apart, to be honest. It was scary. We had a very dark weekend on this movie.
Yeah, I would say there were a couple of points when we weren't sure that this film was going to happen. I'll always remember being on the rooftop, and this was before Nick came on board, and we made a presentation for all the traps and the locations, and Oren and Mark came to visit, and it was one of those, like, I don't know, if this presentation doesn't come across, we might be in Bulgaria, right? And then there was another point where the prosthetics person that was going to potentially do the show, it didn't work out for various reasons, and so now we had to bring somebody else on board, and there were weeks of preparation that we needed to sort of figure out. As it turned out, we ended up shooting half the movie, the non-prosthetics, and then we ended up shooting the majority of prosthetic trap stuff in the last portion of the schedule, right? But that was really a blessing in disguise, because the traps and the prosthetics and the special effects and the makeup and the stunts and all of this is just so complicated. But it allowed us, again, like the first portion was location-based work and stuff like that, which is kind of like the haciendas and the Mexico portion and also replicating the United States. And again, you can see the palette change. There's the cold and blues for the U.S. and the warmer tones, et cetera, for Mexico. So in some sense, we were able to shoot these components, take a pause, digest, get a ramp up, and be prepared for the traps, which is, a character in itself.
Yeah, I think something that I actually loved about the process was, obviously this is, we're following John's story. We're subjectively a part of John Kramer's story. It's the first movie in the series to, in all of this, to be able to actually take him, humanize him, give the audience like the emotional tools to be able to start to make sense of who he is. And as we sort of move from this like more, we move from this like more beautiful kind of like John's hopefulness into this more brutal kind of space. And as we start to like, ultimately everybody's here for the traps. Like we want to see that, but because we're able to hang our hat on John and we're able to care about John and follow John in the process, like the traps sort of take on a different meaning. And what was exciting for me was I had never been on a film where there were actually quite so many, like every department's involved in the traps. Everybody has to be in those meetings. Everybody has to talk about what this means. We all have to be working in conjunction. And we ended, and that was a really beautiful process. And at times difficult, there are simple things that you can't actually know until you test it and test it and test it again and again. But I loved watching that process unfold. And yeah, it's scary. Like I think I pre-lit, some of our bigger spaces we were doing pre-lighting the Sunday before we started shoot, or late night Saturday before we started shooting on a Monday. Like,
there were definitely surprises when I walked on the set a few times where I'm like, oh, I guess that's how it's gonna be.
I was just
because we can't change it now.
Yeah, I was so happy with the lighting, and there were some, just choices that were. I wrote to Nick and I told him there were some very dramatic lighting choices that I was just so pleased that you added drama to the sets, and I really in this film, it deserved that.
Well, look at the scene where that's on right now. This operating theater.
Not
that
easy.
You created in the middle of an abandoned glass factory. It's pretty stunning. I mean, it's telling the story that we need, that John needs to trust these people, and I think it's believable that Cecilia, as a con woman, could have put all this together, but at the same time, it's just stunning. I was blown away when I first saw this.
I really appreciate that, and I was just so pleased that again, I was so pleased with the lights and the lighting and the slight fog filter that added, this tone to it. And how easy is it easy to shoot in a space filled with glass? I don't think so.
Yeah, between the reflections and the sound of people's footsteps on that plastic.
Not easy.
You created some challenges for us, but we rose to them, and it all worked out.
Yeah, there's sort of this, I mean, in terms of arc, and, Anthony's brought up, and Kevin and both brought up, like, our interest in Giallo. Like, as the movie sort of moves from something that feels a little more like a drama, and something more a character study where we're following John through his story, it's like we end up in Mexico, and then we come to this place where it is a little colder. It is the white point of the movie. It's the most like clinical, and the most, this is a space that he feels the most safe in. It doesn't feel dirty. It doesn't feel like he's in the in the desert or the country or anything like that. And I mean this is the sort of, this set is exciting to be able to shoot and light and tell, because you're able to tell that story, and it is a complete conjunction. So much of the lighting in this movie is practically done. It's built into the sets, it's embedded into the spaces, and that only happens if you have collaboration between departments. And I've just felt like, there were times where we misaligned and we had to find it, and that's just part of the process. But all along the way, I felt like we were just in constant communication, and I'm just thrilled with the results.
Well, sorry. You didn't do the little finger thing.
I was just there's a little finger.
I want
to
before you say your thing. I just want to say that from the very beginning of the process, Tobin was always very concerned that he didn't seem like his character didn't seem like an idiot for falling for this woman's scam, and so he wanted to make sure that we were doing everything we could to make it seem like Cecilia's process for ripping people off was foolproof, and even somebody as smart as John Kramer would fall for it. So everything that you guys did as far as the design of the set, and everything that the writers did in terms of getting the nomenclature right for the medical terms and all that, and everything Charlie Clouser did with the music throughout this whole part of the movie that we're seeing right now is all about the warmth and the invitingness and the professionalism that she's created. She's a trickster, no doubt, but she's doing it with your help.
Well, I have to say, our help, everybody's help, and thank goodness we had these actors on board, because whatever we do, it just doesn't work unless you have these fantastic actors, and you have
we lucked out,
and also and of course the guidance of Kevin. Telling them what we want and how we want to try to do it, and having this vision. And I just so thrilled with all of their performances, all of these colors. And, I feel like everybody was just so invested in what we were doing. And look at this young man. I mean, he's just a young boy. He's so fantastic and believable. So I feel like we really were so fortunate.
That kid is one of, like, the greatest people I've ever met. he's got his whole life figured out, in a way that I don't now at age 1200.
Yeah, well, these little moments, all of this, not only his acting, but these moments in the film where we have this empathy for John Kramer, it was just so valuable and important because then there's that payoff later on in the movie. And I just, again, I just feel like we worked so hard and it shows on the screen, and how we talked so many times about this wheel and how we were going to do this and that. And then we're back, at the, this operating theater. So it's just perfect.
Now we lucked out with actors big time, and Synnøve. She had been in Ragnarok, this Norwegian TV show that's on Netflix. But the other actors, the Mexican actors that you see here, Paulette and Octavio, and they were all just so great, and they were so happy to be in the movie. You don't sometimes. Sometimes people aren't actually really happy to be in a Saw movie, if you can believe it. And there was nobody in this film that was not thrilled to be on it, and it just makes such a difference.
Just during this scene, I just wanted to. So we, because of the subjectivity of the movie, we obviously spent a lot of time talking about lenses and filtration and, all of that sort of like plays into what you're doing. But this, this was something Kevin had always brought up, was an interest in using tilt shift lenses and using, we ended up mixing some Vaseline, rubbed on filters and stuff like that to sort of create this more subjective space, this more John, sort of in John's head as we're kind of experiencing this kind of moment.
Yeah, I was impressed that you can, this shot of John's face is tilt shift, I believe, but then some of these others are just literally Vaseline on the lens because we couldn't afford 2 tilt shift lenses, and almost everything we shot on this movie was 2 cameras at the same time.
Yeah,
and it's a pretty trippy effect.
Yeah, for those that are interested, we shot it on 2 Venice cameras, and we shot at 4K. Most of it's at 2000 ASA because we wanted a little more grit and texture. And that filter that Anthony was mentioning before that adds the blooming and a little bit of haze is a pearlescent 1 that we used on a set of Cook Classic Eye Pancros, which are modern lenses, but they're designed to kind of have a more of a vintage feel. And we did a decent amount of testing before Kevin and I settled on those.
Yeah, that was quite a process, and your meticulousness is appreciated. It's sometimes we'd be testing lenses at the lab that was an hour away from our production office. I'd be like, oh yeah. No, that one's better. That one's worse.
Yeah, and there is the reality of
you have the eye.
There is the reality of you have 2 cameras, you have a limited selection of sets. I mean, we, in terms of what we were aiming for and what we wanted, because it was really important to us that this movie was 1.85 and not CinemaScope, because we wanted to bring people back to Saw 1, back to Saw 2. We wanted the language of the movie to fit into that world. And so 1.85 was an important choice in terms of our framing. And then also similarly, we wanted more vintage lenses and we wanted more grit in the image, and we wanted to do whatever it took to be able to arrive there, which is, we're shooting in a digital age. We're not shooting with film. So we're trying to find ways to take the tools that we have available now and tell a story that feels relevant and to today, but also reaches back to some of those aesthetic touchstones.
Yeah, I have no regrets about shooting 1.85, which not that many, it's still out there, but so many filmmakers want to do that widescreen look.
Yeah.
And if you just look at the close-ups that we get right here, they just wouldn't be the same thing.
Absolutely.
You'd crop so much of their face out that you would feel compelled to not be so close, but it ultimately is much more intimate, and it uses all the screen, or most of the 16:9 screen that is the way people watch movies. So I think it was the right choice for this.
Yeah, and in order to be able to access John's emotions, that's at the end of the day what everything that we were trying to do and tell is about. It's bringing the audiences into the space, and you have to be able to, you know, so much of this movie is shot in close up. Like that's another thing. It's like bringing us into that detail, bringing us into his like where he, you know, where he lives and what he is. So I feel like 185 just really feels right for it.
By the way, we haven't been talking about Código, the tequila brand that's featured in the film. But
now it's time.
We're gonna need to take a drink.
Should we take a break?
Well, I don't know if we need to take a break, but we need to take a drink. 'Cause there it is.
Oh,
There it
yeah.
is.
All right.
That's
All
the
right.
featured tequila
Well,
of Saw.
who wants? Do you want to do it in period? I
I
want
already
to just.
finished
I want to
mine, I
just
guess.
say thank you to both of you for putting in all this golden warm tones. It's so effective for the emotions because at the end of the day, this is us presenting John's story, and this is all a build up for the next couple of scenes, right? And I just love it because this is consistent with what we talked about from the get-go.
Which is a real, I mean, there's a real challenge here, right? Because this is a Saw movie. So it's like, how do we reach these kind of, you know, this sort of jubilation and the emotional heights that John is feeling, but still keep it in the Saw world, you know?
Right. Yeah, it was a challenge. You know, when I first read the script, my first instinct was every scene that's in the daytime needs to be transferred to the night, and that makes sense in the world of Saw. Thank you, but the practicality of shooting everything at night, it just wouldn't have worked out. So we embraced the beauty of Mexico and the fact that it does help John Kramer's sense of trust of the situation that he's getting himself in.
Yeah.
You know, Tobin was really right to constantly be hammering us to make sure that we're creating an environment and a situation where he doesn't seem too goofy for falling for the trick. You know, thematically he's ultimately just a human being, and so he wants to keep living despite his cancer. And I think we pulled it off. You know, here we are in the movie at the turning point where he realizes he's been ripped off. Can I just say that this scene, Nick, I'm sorry I had to edit your shot because Nick was hand holding the camera for this, and we had one take in particular where you really just followed his action so perfectly that we kind of could have done the whole thing as one, or we didn't because I'm an editor and I'm a spaz, and you know, just had to put all these cuts in it. But there was one particular take that was just so well done. It was the best shot in the movie in a lot of ways. It's all cut tail. Oh, look, there's Anthony now.
Yeah.
Oh
This
my
is
God.
one
That's
of
our production designer.
Anthony Stabley's many. Do the lines.
I can't. I
Hello
can never.
and welcome to Section 5.
That was actually the
And,
first thing we shot on the movie.
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that little
That
piece.
is the very first thing.
Oh, that was our
shot.
Zolly. That was our Zolly.
That was
really-
our Zolly. Yeah.
I really appreciate the support.
No, you were great, and Anthony is also the teenage boy in the photo of Gabriella's family that's hanging in the foyer.
Oh, what can I
So
say?
You're all over this movie.
I think something that I'm actually really proud of and happy about too, just even seeing this again, is like we spend a lot of time and conversation talking about what's the geography of this film, because when you make a movie, ultimately you have to cheat locations together. You have to cheat, like, you know, a variety of spaces that are shot in disparate places all together. And then when you show it to the audience, it needs to feel like one simultaneous kind of flow in space, right? And to be able to see this material and then, you know, see him come back into the hacienda, into this warehouse, and not have the audience be confused, feels like we did our jobs well. And I feel really happy about like even seeing that again.
Yeah, it was great to connect the location of the hacienda with, which was on the outskirts of Mexico City, with the factory that was actually in Mexico City. And then we love that statue and it being a miniature. It was a miniature that we composited. And where did that statue
you know
end
what?
up?
It's going to end up in my backyard,
Love
but it's in Oren's warehouse in
I'm
downtown
waiting
Los
for the
Angeles.
party at your house.
Oh man, I'm not going to be here for the opening of the movie. Did I tell you that?
No, when
Heartbreaking.
Where the 20? You mean the 29th?
29th.
Aren't
yeah.
we were supposed to have a wrap party? What happened to that?
We did have a wrap
I meant
party.
premiere party.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah, that was
premiere.
long story. I'll tell you later.
Okay, you can tell me later. But
All right, so now we're getting into the Saw stuff in the movie.
right,
And-
and this is a transition period. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even where he's like, "Where are we going?" and he says, "To hell," and it's like actually like in a very like literal way.
Infierno.
We talked about like how do you make Dante's Inferno? You know what I mean? And some of the color palette decisions were driven by that, and it was like a mutually discussed thing. And even if you look at the last scene where the operating theater, originally we see it as like a white sterile space. When he comes back and it's abandoned, we've started to move into this dirty, grimy sort of color palette mixed with our whites, and then as the movie progresses, we move into this like greens and yellows, which we just saw sort of at this this sort of plaza area, and then now we're here, and the movie just sort of kicks off into all of this sort of like richer, more giallo color palette.
Yeah.
But you guys were able to pull off the look of a pretty complex environment, and even a kind of ambiguous environment. Like I think maybe when you walk out of this movie, you don't necessarily have this room in your head in the way that we do, but I think in a good way. And when I look at these compositions, there's all sorts of stuff in them, but they don't necessarily feel cluttered. You know what I mean? The light organizes them.
I feel that there's the grit and the texture and all that, but it's also clear and clean in the sense of information, and that's the most important part. We're just trying to get this information to the audience, and we're connected through colors, we're connected through textures. We know that the factory and the operating theater are together. We see the plastic, we see the colors, et cetera, et cetera. And then once we're in this space here, it was so important because, again, I've said this before, there's an art to horror. And that art is that we show information, we hold back information, and then there's this reveal. It's so important, right? So Kevin stressed to us, look, we want to hide this, we don't want to see this trap, et cetera, and we did our best to do that. And so later on, we have these reveals, and they're just so important for the audience because they're surprises. Surprises are important in suspense, these type of movies. So,
Well, we always talked about this environment, which is where most of the movie takes place, as being like a theater for Cecilia's benefit, right? And,
sure.
and also for John's benefit in that control room where he's looming over everything. So we found this practical location, but then you built a huge amount, like everything that we're seeing when we're facing like that, the window and the wall.
yeah, the office
you
space,
built-
the
you built
railings,
all
the
that.
staircase.
But we were working with,
The-
for example, those pillars, and
Right.
this room is actually probably 4 times larger than what it appears to be in here. But we had to kind of bring it down a bit and create extra walls to make it.
It was
manageable.
like John Kramer's theater. I mean, I think that
Absolutely.
we had the pillars that gave you that symmetry. We had the steps that eventually, sorry about that, the steps that eventually lead you to the master trap at the end. And I always love, there's a shot here, and I'm going to say it now. Okay, so Kevin and we went to Catholic school. And I love the part where he's in the finale. When he's wearing this dark and it's almost priestly kind of approach, and all of that. And there's some religious iconography for sure in this film, and maybe it's subtle, maybe not. I don't know.
In addition to like all of the build out that Anthony and his team did in the space, which was stunning, in order to not shoot night work for every single time we're in here, we actually tented this entire warehouse. We put up, I think, probably 40 or 50 fixtures within this warehouse and had complete control over them. So we could create these kind of sodium vapor oranges and these dirty yellows and this kind of greenish blues. And actually, this scene, I was I had COVID when we shot this scene. This was one of the scenes I was.
When didn't you have COVID?
Well, it was only during this scene in a piece of 89.
89 was the big one. We'll get to that in a minute.
That's like the big scene.
Yeah, this was, and this did ick me out a bit watching it from a trailer, like right out of the set. I was isolated in a trailer, and I had monitors and walkies and headsets, so I was able to talk to the
That
operators.
was just
Yeah, it was kind of like.
That was another moment
Yeah.
where we didn't know if the film was going to happen. There was just like
Yeah.
at least 3 moments.
there
in
were
this-
3 moments where it's like
At least.
we might not actually make this movie,
We may not.
even
make
though
this-
we've shot more than half of it. To digress for a moment, the prosthetics people are obviously showing incredible work here. I mean, look at what they did with the guy's arms and the cutting, and then we also often don't give enough credit to the VFX team, the digital work.
Oh, look.
It's a okay. We can talk about the Hell
Is that-
nightclub,
but is that-
'cause this
is
is
that-
Anthony's favorite scene, and
Right, but-
that was my Sisamaho, by the way. But
Yeah. But
yeah,
that
this
starts
scene-
the whole. I'm so sorry, but this starts the whole sequence of
I know
pushing the
I
colors
know.
in the kidnap.
And just so the world knows, if
The
you
colors
if
are
you were to
correct.
turn around where the camera's facing right now, you'd see the Saw bathroom because we just built everything all in the same place.
Yeah, this is one floor above the warehouse that you're just
Yeah,
seeing.
yeah. This is a crazy night. We shot till dawn out on these train tracks.
This was the last night of our first block of shooting.
That's right. Yeah. So Paulette Hernandez,
Amazing.
what a incredible actress. She put so much passion into this, and I think when we got to her scene where she cuts her leg off, everybody in the room was like, "Oh," God. Like the other actors were like, "I guess I gotta fucking deliver, man."
Yeah, she
'Cause
set
we
the
shot
bar.
her first, and yeah, the bar was set so high for just the performance intensity that was called for. She's tiny compared to this guy. This guy was a giant. Hopefully you believe it when you watch on screen that she was able to kick him away from her because she's just so intense and so nice too.
They were all amazing and so supportive. And again, when she, she put out her performance in the film, it's not only set the bar, but it was just like there was a competitive nature I felt. I think that's what you're kind of saying. Like the other actors were like, "Hey, we need to do our thing," and it was just you could sense it.
In terms of, we jump in
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
jump into the veterinarian.
Yeah.
This was something Anthony and I talked about, but something that was really important to me was a lot of the Saw films have tended to land in a somewhat monochromatic space in terms of location and in terms of environment, in terms of lighting. Something that was really important to me on this film was that we would, rather than having blocks of the film land in a monochromatic space, we would have like primary, secondary, and tertiary colors that are playing throughout the movie. And so in this sort of what I wanted to do was take the color palette that we're going to use throughout the rest of the movie and then let each space, like the nightclub is red, and there's these amber tones that are underlying. This space is very much in the green kind of space, and then we have some underlying like ambers to offset that. I wanted to try and take those color palettes that we're going to use elsewhere and take stuff that was going to be tertiary in the main space and sort of the main area and let those become our primary colors within each of these sort of abduction scenes. This is just like another example of where we were able to do that. And this was completely built out by Anthony and his team. This was
What was this? A
Totally
insane
empty
asylum,
space.
a nunnery? I can't remember what this location was.
This was a sanitarium, and we shot multiple set spaces, in this one location. So we were
Oh yeah, this was
fortunate
also the
because
bar.
we had to consolidate the bar, the bathroom, like where she comes in here.
Oh my God, Renata Vaca, another just the very first 2 actors that I auditioned for this was Renata Vaca, who plays Gabriella, and Paulette Hernandez, who plays Valentina. Like that never ever happens.
Wild.
And Octavio, who plays Mateo, was that same day. It was like, wait a minute, are you just being lazy if you hire the very first people
Really
you-
good
I mean,
actors.
I
Really good actor.
auditioned tons of other people, but the very first ones were the ones, and obviously she did an amazing job.
And this was a practical bathroom. I was operating the camera
That's right,
here,
yeah.
so it was me in the
Scary ass
stall.
bathroom.
We were very
Yeah.
like
But
camera
we,
right in
we,
there.
added,
Clean the
we, added
toilets,
this,
Anthony.
we added the stall doors so
Yeah.
that we could see specific bits of information like
Yeah.
the feet.
Oh, we were
Right,
both.
and we added the closet.
we were
and
channeling
and
Al's
all-
bar
so
in
the-
Los Angeles from our '80s punk
Yeah,
days, right?
that's what I said earlier today. Is that there was a sensibility that we all have, and we love certain movies, and that when we were kids, back in the '80s, we would go to places like the Scream or the Firefly or whatever, and all of that. These are life experiences that come back, and so all we wanted to do is reflect that onto the films that we make now.
God knows how many Easter eggs you painted in the graffiti in this.
There's a lot of little. You have to frame grab and look.
I mean, something that's so fun about this and about this kind of world is that you know, it's not about glamour. It is about like bringing this sort of gritty, scary aesthetic. Like we can play with darkness. We can play with letting things fall off, letting characters sort of look, terrified. And I love that we were able to do that in all of these sorts of spaces with all these. This is such a giallo.
And-
This
Oh,
abduction.
can I
I do
just
wanna
say,
s-
because the world will never know this because it's not in the credits, it's me playing the piano.
Oh my God.
So, all right, go
Are
on.
you-
What were you
okay.
gonna say?
Well, what I was going to say is, again, there's an art to horror. And one of the things that we talk about is, holding back information. But then conversely, there's a space such as this where the audience can see what's going on and the characters don't know what's going on. And I really love the play that you guys had with, here we're going to see Pighead. She doesn't see Pighead. Here we do click, click, click with the lights. And then, of course, red was such an important color. Again, we used it in the painting, which we made for the film. And also, we have the scene in the garage where, again, red reveals somebody very important that we love in the history and legacy of Saw. So I just love this, and originally because we wanted to continue this aesthetic of medical, we were thinking at one point white house, but I'm so glad we didn't do that and that we chose this location.
Yeah, I love this scene. It was this shot, the one where she's looking out the window, as Nick knows.
Jesus fucking
You
Christ.
you just cannot believe how hard filmmaking can be
It's not
sometimes.
easy.
Where you want to get her reflection in
There
the
you
window.
go. There you go. That was the
So
one.
giallo.
So giallo.
Big, long shadow.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Blocking our reflections just took a lot of work. And also, we hit every light that you're seeing here was crafted by us and placed by us. So
Right.
it's like, it just takes.
And I want to say
Yeah.
something. It's not like we're trying to do purely this this idea of homage to Giallo. What we're trying to do is go back to the roots of the original Saw.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Which,
And that's what we were
Yeah.
honoring the original Saw. We were honoring the audience. We're honoring like the legacy of Saw, and that's what we were trying to do here.
remember, Nick, you had to go out in pre-production a couple times to shoot these these surveillance shots, and I think you got rained out the first time.
It did actually, yes. Yeah, Mexico City with its like constant rain. This was such a fun. I mean, this was your idea, Kevin. I thought it was such a fun idea for how to show this because you it's one of those moments where you sort of lean in,
Yeah, I hope
and I
so,
love that.
yeah.
I love that where it's like, it's just you're like, what, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing?
I mean, some people get really nervous when movies get that quiet for that long, but we haven't done
Here
it
we
in
go.
Saw since Saw 1. And I was like, we have to just be totally quiet and then just explode. Then, of course, Shawnee's big intro. This was a fun moment. Bringing Shawnee back was fantastic.
Fuck yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I want to just say, so proud of Maria Salinas and her decoration of this house. And we'll talk about our trap department team later as we get into it. But I just felt like this is such a wonderful reveal for all of this. And I love this sequence. It's great.
We did a thing where the flashbacks, we went to a 12, sometimes an 18 millimeter lens. In the older Saws, we would do color timing tricks to indicate it was a flashback, and that felt like it wasn't going to fly in the modern world. So I think it was really great that we went that way.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Here we are, the main event.
Let the games begin.
John Kramer's Theater of Horror.
I mean, what I love is that, yeah, John is such a, there is a theatricality to like these moral questions he's presenting every single character. And so we have this luxury of being able to similarly present a theatricality in the way that, he wears a robe. There's like everything is designed in a certain way. And I loved that we got this opportunity to be able to take each of them, into something like this.
He should have been a film director. All right, so this is scene 89, which it took me 2 weeks to edit this freaking scene, and it took us days to shoot it because it's a 20-minute scene, or at least it was originally, and some of us got COVID right in the middle of shooting it, and it was hard. It was very hard. We've got 5 different characters that all need to be covered for their various eye lines to each other, as well as just having cool shots. Like, how do you make a Saw movie that doesn't continually have fresh perspectives throughout? And Nick, obviously you were instrumental in all of that, but then COVID took you away,
Yeah, Jesus.
and then COVID took me away. So it was just very challenging. And Tobin had a lot of ideas about where he would be at any given time in the scene, and so we really began shooting this scene by having a Steadicam lead Tobin around the room in the ways that felt most organic to him, and then the idea was to go back in and pick up the pieces. Well, COVID changed all that, so we accomplished what we set out to do. It was just a lot harder than we had planned on, or it should have been.
I think one of the things that was really helpful was the fact that we had so many sort of early rehearsal blocking kind of period, with the traps and testing, etc. So we had to figure out where the chains were going to be, how far each of the actors could actually
so
move forward.
complicated.
We blocked it out. We drew it out on, as far as like a drawing. And then that really helped us because he could cruise around, John could cruise around and engage with each of these antagonists. And they were within like arm's length, but they were also repressed by the length of their either their chain or being tied up, etc. And we also talked about early on, just where each of these traps were going to be, how they were hidden, so it was more of a reveal. So I think all of that work really helped out later on when we actually shot it.
Yeah, it was hard. It was harder than most people could even imagine, because we knew that the entire second half of the movie was going to be in this same environment, and we needed to find ways to keep it fresh. But we also had to think about, we want it to feel intimate, where the characters are truly talking to each other, but it also needs to be a big enough space that it has a grandiosity to it. And it had to be a big enough space that justified them using the intestines to gather the card in, but not being too big. And so Nick's team had to use pretty long lenses for a lot of these shots to get an intimate feeling, even though the characters are 20 or 30 feet apart from each other in a lot of ways. So that was hard.
Yeah, I think, we shot half of the scene before we shut down with COVID. And then we shot the other half after, which gave us a little time to digest what was going on.
But again, this is the introduction to the traps, and the traps are like a character in the movie. It's a pretty big deal, and how we work together with Hosh Special Effects, with the prosthetics department, figuring out where we were going to hide limbs. In this case, Valentina's trap. It was so vital to be able to complete the gag with her. Everybody will see what happens with her leg, but how we were able to accomplish that, and how we were able to also work with the actors in a safe manner. That was such a big deal. And being able to control the Geely saw. So it was a combination of all of that, and also making each of these traps very realistic and active in the lighting. having these lights that turn on, it feels like everything's going to work. And also integrating the styles with the existing mechanisms that are in this factory so that everything feels like it's part of the environment.
Sure. Yeah, each one of these trap scenes took weeks and weeks to plan out. And if you consider this Valentina trap in particular, we had to make an entire body cast of Paulette. We flew her to Los Angeles to do it, and then our team at Fractured Effects in Monrovia, California, they spent so much time doing every detail to make the body look accurate, and then they had to work with Anthony's Traps team to make it all fall apart in the right way. And you only get sometimes only one chance, right? And so we had to design that platform that she's sitting on there to be able to accommodate her real leg. She stuck it down through a hole. And you can't even tell. Like, there's very little digital work in some of these scenes. Our VFX company did an absolutely incredible job making this movie work. But at the same time, most of the blood you see is practical, and most of the cutting into limbs that you see is all real stuff. And so Anthony's team had to figure out, how do we make Paulette's head fall off in a way that's coordinated with the way her body collapses, in a way that Cecilia can reach it when she later has to drag it over to herself to cut the intestines out. Like, it's far more complicated, I think, than almost anybody can imagine.
And as Nick said, people don't realize we have to do take 1, take 2, take 3, 4. We're going to have blood all over the place. The majority of this factory space had basically linoleum that was faux finished as concrete so that we could clean it up quickly and do take 2. And in addition to that, the majority of the traps, if not all the traps, were coated in resin so that we could have that kind of clean finish to go on to the next take. And anyway, I'm just so pleased with all of that. But it was a lot of work, and all these different departments were, working together to make this thing happen. And we're just so pleased with everything.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, after you.
I was just going to say, I have to talk about Paulette's performance again.
Please.
If you look at the number of camera angles that are on her for this freaking 20-minute scene, it's not 20 minutes anymore because I had to cut out stuff for time, but look how intense and invested she is for all of this. And then think about the fact that we had to shoot her 50 times, bringing that level of tearful passion. It's
just again and again.
It's like when I watch this scene, I cry a little because of the amount of work that it took to pull it off, and the intensity that the actors brought to it.
I think one of the interesting things about something like this is, at the same, it's both, we're doing a lot, but at the same time we're shooting this sort of material in like a day and a half or 2 days tops. So you're also moving very fast, even from a lighting perspective. Like, a lot, and for what I was doing, a lot of it was, how do I build it into the space? Because we don't have time to light on a shot by shot basis. We are lighting a space. We're accepting that this is kind of a little more brutal. There's some grotesqueness to this space. It is, people at sort of their most terrified moment in their life. They're sweaty. They're upset. Like, this is not glamour. And so, but it is, we're moving extraordinarily quickly, and all of these people are having to bring their A game again and again and again. But we're also having to capture these scenes within like a day or a day and a half.
It just feels so wrong how little time you have to make a film. And I know every single film feels the same way, but my God, we shot so much footage for this movie. My first cut of the film was 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow.
And so I hope people are able to check out the deleted scenes and the version of this scene that is 7 minutes longer. Not just the trap itself, but John's monologue and that sort of thing. I'm not saying it's better at 7 minutes longer, but there's some pretty cool stuff.
You
that
really, and
got
you,
taken
I mean,
out.
every shot list I received, like, and every shot list I came through, there were 7 pages, 6 or 7 pages of shots that we had to capture in that day. Because the reality is, you need all of these pieces. You need all of these characters reacting. You need all of these details of the gore, but also you're able to cut away from that, and
like
it's essential.
I think every camera angle that we shot for this scene is in the movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a pretty horrific scene, and I just want to thank again the prop department, Deborah Galvan Caballero, Jorge Sanders, Mr. Sanders,
They were great,
and
no doubt.
Berenice Galvan Caballero. So I just think they are amazing, and they were so attentive. And our on-set dressing team, they were fantastic. And then working so closely with Fractured Effects, you know, like when you look at this piece, we had to actually measure where her neck is going to be, where her neck is going to be cut, where we're going to stick her leg through a hole and have her real leg and the prosthetic leg joined, and
The whole mechanism
The
for
whole-
dropping her head off.
yeah,
on
also
cue.
how those wheels, I have like these chicken scratch sketches that were then embellished into beautiful concept art. But, you know, we had to figure how these wheels were going to turn.
Love that fucking moment.
And I something that I always bring up is, you know, again, Kevin calls me. I'm driving my kids to camp or school or whatever. He's like, hey, I've got this in the script. It's like she has to take the bone marrow with the spoon. And like, hey, do you have any better ideas? I'm like, okay, I'm driving the kids to school. So let me call you back in an hour. So I pull off to the side of the road or whatever. And I call him. I'm like, hey, why don't we do like when you go to see the dentist and they take out the saliva and have that fluid sucking out of you, and they do it for surgery
That's
as
right,
well. And we did it, and it was so visual because then you could actually see like the blood coming through and the marrow. And, you know, we're visual storytellers. That's our job, basically, right? And we have to give all this information to the audience. So for them to see the marrow and the blood and the weight and the scale and this
So hard.
moving, that makes it real. And when it's real, that's when the audience buys into it.
This scene is my favorite thing I ever shot.
That's
It just is.
awesome.
It just is. From John saying, all of you promise dying people to this is just such a great run.
You get, yeah, I mean, this, like,
Here we go.
the violence, like, I think what's funny is, like, we would show up every day and there's, like, blood covering the entire
I know.
floor.
And
you just accept it.
Yeah,
It's a lot of fucking fun.
there's so much gore on the floor and her head and the blood, and then we had to like tiptoe around that as we're shooting the entire rest of the
Yeah.
movie and moving
For
cranes
continuity.
and forklifts and everything. And it's like, well, Anthony, it's time to repaint Valentina's blood on the floor.
Yeah.
You know, and like where was the cart with the TV on it? Where was the cart with the coat on it?
Yeah,
As,
we have to
you
be
know.
very careful. But again, I think it's a process where you go from, okay, there's like this method design or method, you know, approach to what we're doing, and it's horrific, and it goes through your brain. And at a certain point, like you say, oh, we can do this. And now here we are all standing in front of the monitor, and like somebody's finger cracks, somebody's appendage gets, you know, cut, and we're like, awesome, because not because it's awesome, like an awesome thing, but like we actually achieved what we're trying to do. You know, that's our job. And if we were on some other movie, you know, like some military movie where people's limbs are getting shot, that's their job as well. So our job is to make it realistic. We want the audience to buy into it, and then that's part of horror, right? They're like frightened and engaged, and I feel like that all that preparatory work made it possible so that we could shoot so many pages and so many different takes.
I mean, that's the amazing thing about working on a film like this is at the end of the day, you 100% know if you got it or you didn't get it. And I can't say the same thing about any other kind of filmmaking. Like when we shot that leg getting cut off Paulette and her reaction and the incredible way that the prosthetics worked
Yep.
out. It's like, oh my God, we just did something really, really fucking amazing. Whereas if it was just a scene with two serious actors having a conversation in a cafe, it's like, well, I don't know, I guess, fine.
One of the things like just like we just saw like the lights shut off after the trap end, and one of the conversations that we had was how do we keep every trap sort of unique
That's
and
right, yeah.
individualistic, but it all happens in the same space. We love the first Saw movie, but we don't want it to be the first Saw movie where a lot of the material is in this one space with one lighting setup. And so one of the things we devised and thought about and talked about was, what if the idea is that John has these things wired up, to circuits. And so as every trap is starting and ending, we're getting this transition of light so that every trap can kind of have its own unique look. And we use that throughout. And as we got into this space, like I knew that I wanted the light to be more brutal, more toppy, more hard light. But one thing we did is we had lights on every camera so we could control having these like pings in the eyes so that you could still get the emotion, you could still get eye lights. And even a scene like this, it's, you're trying to create color contrast within the scene that uses the same sort of color palette that we're playing throughout the movie. I'm not setting individual lights for every shot. We're shooting so quickly and so much material
right.
that you're trying to design in three-dimensional space, and you're thinking about where these characters are going to sit, where they're going to be staged, and using what's there. And then it's all LED, so everything's being dialed constantly.
I just want to say something. I, first of all, completely appreciate all of those lighting moments. Now that we're here at this point where we're going to be cutting somebody and pulling their intestines, I would like to just say that I was at my it was in my dining room, and I'm reading this scene in the script. Nobody's in my house, and I said, oh my God, this can't be happening. I could not believe it, and I was just like, but another part of me is like, I have to do this movie because this is so insane. It's like memorable. It's like, they're books, horror history, etc. And this will be like one of those iconic moments where people will be writing about this from now until I'm dead or somebody's serving me applesauce. I have no idea, but this was so insane. And I was just thrilled that we went and rehearsed. And here we are. It is realistically happening.
But you know what I can say about this particular scene is the only scene I've ever shot at a movie that turned out to be infinitely simpler than what we planned. Like everything's always harder than you think it's going to be, and as much testing as you do, you're never prepared enough. That one in the script, they had to like find a piece of like I think a piece of the bomb from Diego, and then we made it a pulley. It's like because that's the only way that the intestines is going to weigh enough to be able to throw it. And we went through all this testing, and then
let's talk about
and then the day we did it, we only did 2 takes of the whole thing, and not only did it work out perfectly, but the way the intestine snaps under that one wheel.
Yeah, we're lucky.
In both takes, it did that. It's like, I guess that's what intestines do, man.
Yeah, look, it was very believable.
It was like we shot it in record time.
It was believable. And talking about that BlackBerry, we just wanted to, just give a little note to the audience and all the folks that are listening that, we just wanted to make sure that when we're talking about technology, computer graphics, computers, telephones, any of the period,
of it
all of the vehicles that we see there, it takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2. We can say that. So we just want to make sure that we were true to the period.
That's why there's green and white taxis in Mexico City instead of pink and white like that.
We really loved it. We loved it.
How many green and white freaking Volkswagen Bug taxis did we make? A bunch.
We did a bunch. We painted them and we made it happen.
That was
and
fun.
we were pleased with all of that. But, Shawnee is fantastic in this film, and it's such a nice contrast between, the physicality of Sonovi and the height difference, and she stands out to, Sonovi, and it's just great. I just love the dynamic of all of them.
I can't believe how lucky we were to get Sonovi for this movie. My God, she and I didn't know what she would be like as a person. I Zoomed with her before she flew onto the set and started shooting, but what an incredibly
Fully
nice,
invested.
dedicated actress she is, and embraced both the trustworthy doctor that she was supposed to be and then the super evil villain. She was great, really great. So everything that's up in that control room, we had to shoot before everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
That was fun. I mean, this is and fun as in not fun, because all the stuff that you see on the monitor screens didn't exist as
Right.
footage when we shot all the stuff that's up there.
I mean, literally, this material that's at the Hacienda, where you shot all this in the first 3 days of production, and then you're cutting to material like this, where you're,
Yeah, months later.
months later, and it has to all feel like the same world, and it all has to connect in the same way the control room has to connect to continuity-wise and just emotionally.
And what nice lighting from Nacho.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
say
my
that.
gaffer on this movie, Nacho, was just, I'd worked with him on another movie, and him and his entire team brought their A game and killed it every single day with a smile on their faces. I was
Look at that.
really, really fortunate to be able to work with them again.
Yeah, they were fun.
Boop. I love that. I always love that.
That would
It makes
probably
me
kill
laugh.
him, but here he is. I guess it didn't.
Knocked him out long enough for some other stuff to happen.
Oh my God. So because when we shot this, we didn't even have a set outside the windows. We had just enough so that it looked
Yeah.
correct for later.
We had to do
But
some
then
cheating.
we had to digitally add, we had to shoot all those images that go into the
Yeah.
monitor screens and then digitally put them in after we shot all this stuff.
A lot of
Welcome
work.
to Hollywood, man. It's tough.
I know you. Kramer. Brain cancer, right?
So Stephen Brandy was another great find.
Yeah. I think it was perfect for this film.
I came to get my money back.
He just directed a film himself. I haven't seen it yet.
On some level, I think that was probably helpful, right? Maybe
Yeah,
on
yeah,
some
sure.
level. I know there was like that whole blocking. We'll talk about it later towards the end, right? Everybody.
Oh yeah,
That was a lot. That was a whole,
yeah. Well,
the whole to do. But
in the
that
spirit
was-
of collaboration,
they worked out well.
You wanna welcome everybody's input.
Yeah.
For sure. Now this seems like a remote location, but it was in the middle of Mexico City. It was so noisy. We had to re-record so much of this dialogue because there were just trucks and sirens
Yeah.
and madness outside.
All the money I had, that was for my family, that money. To make good with my kids when I was gone.
But instead you traded it for magic beans. More time.
Tobin,
That's a
Tobin's the
T-shirt,
best.
Magic Beans.
Parker, have you ever thought about that? Because if you find the meaning of your life,
One of the things about this film in general is there's so many little details that you have to think about in terms of what could they have done to free themselves or get the jump on so-and-so, and even down below when they get the intestines, we had to be careful about
Yeah, we had
making sure that the intestines was the logical thing for Cecilia to do. And in this room itself, John and Amanda, they have a pretty good idea of how things are going to go down. But, they know that ultimately they're going to be letting Parker go. And they know what he's going to do, which is go for the gun. But, you really have to think about the details of how John could have been screwed over through lack of planning, and then even planning things like the unbreakable windows and the
Sure.
little hatches that
And
are
where the bag's gonna
behind him there.
go, where the gun's gonna
It's so
go.
complicated. Timers and it just
There's an
goes on and on.
there's an inevitability that you can't consider every possibility.
But you have to try.
Yeah.
I mean, God knows I would lie in bed at night before shooting and during shooting and just go, oh my God, what did I miss that when the movie comes out, everybody's going to say, why didn't they just do this? And I'm sure there will be things that we still haven't considered. you know?
Yeah, we live in an era where they frame grab the image and then they say, "Oh, look, there's the cup. Oh, look, the cup has moved over here." Or they're like, "Oh, this could be the idea that maybe she did this or she did that." But hey, look, we have to appreciate the fans for their love for detail, and we did the best that we tried to go through all the logic, and I feel like that's what we did. So. I love this upcoming scene with
Octavio getting tased.
yes, I
Yeah.
love this part. I was very happy. I don't know why I clapped.
Yeah,
He's
he's
like, "You bitch," and then this is the best.
one of the things about dude actors is that
Yeah.
they usually don't. They're not comfortable playing total fear.
Yeah.
Right. And Octavio definitely was more than comfortable.
did great.
Being like understanding he's not a sympathetic character.
No.
But he just goes for it and is constantly inhabiting that character, even though it's nothing like the cool guy that he is in real life. And even when I did the first audition with him, one of the first things he said was like, "Why would I pick up that tape recorder?" And in my head I'm like, "Because the script says so." But
Right.
that's not good enough. He was right to call it
I
out.
think
And
it's
so
awesome.
I said, "Well, guess what? How about if you get an electric shock to your neck for not picking it up?" And he's like, "Okay," and he got the job. He got the job. He got the job by
Oh my God.
being
Okay, Billy.
Oh, Billy, here
So
he is.
I was so excited to light Billy because I'm like, I hoped he had it. We talked about whether he'd have his own trailer.
Yeah.
We talked about, but this truly, Billy is like, I mean, he
This
is
is great.
a big character in our kind of like in the Saw world and also
doubt.
just in
Oh, awesome.
like the
move.
public conscious in a way.
Love
and
it.
so like to get this sort of like big giallo moment of like,
Yeah.
boom, here's Billy. And then we take this, there's a lighting transition. We take it into green and blue. And,
And
like,
then there's,
love Billy.
and then there's which kept
oh,
this one.
fuck
Yes.
yeah. This was
Oh,
so
my
fun.
God.
When we're shooting, everybody on the crew just absolutely loves Billy. They're like, "Oh my God, Billy!" They have to take their photos
Yeah.
with Billy.
He's a cantankerous little puppet. He doesn't ride bikes by himself.
I have a
I'll tell
selfie
ya.
with Billy. He's like my new boyfriend.
We have a good one. We have a good one with Billy. But all of this worked out really well. Just having that band with the electrical circuit
Oh my God.
wiring around him helped us because we needed to achieve this, right? Having the him scoop up portion of his brain, cutting his brain, all of that was not easy, and I'm just really thrilled
the
the way that
planning,
we
the
did it.
planning that went into it made shooting the scene not as bad as I thought it would be.
Right.
And so we had a plan for a fake top of the head
Yep.
that would go on the real actor, and then a dummy head that we could actually cut into.
Yep.
And at one point, the dummy head fell out of the budget.
Yep.
I
remember.
I won't go into details on that, but it was
Yep.
a very unwelcome surprise. And then Fractured came
I
through.
think it just
and they-
happened. I
they-
think it was like, here it is.
I know what happened, but anyways, it when we shot it, because Fractured Effects did just make it for us as a favor
Awesome.
for the crew, and I couldn't believe that we were able to shoot right on the thing and then move over to the screen and have the
Right.
hand. Like, you would never guess that that's not really the top of the guy's
Right,
head.
but
Yeah,
again, the
something-
band helped with the transition.
That's true.
And that was something you had really encouraged that I really loved, which was in order to sell the realism of this, it's not just cut, 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 cut. It's panning, it's tilting, it's connecting geography, it's connecting parts, pieces together. And I think you use it throughout every trap. Every trap does that, and it does it really well.
Yeah, we tried to like tie things together in the frame as much as we possibly could. So it's
Yeah.
not just, lazy. Here's a shot of him, and here's a shot of the instruments and all that. It's like you got stuff in the foreground and the background, and we tie characters together, and it's very hard to shoot. And my compliments to you. And frankly, it's hard to edit too, because it's much easier to edit when you're only dealing with matching the action on one element, but when you have two or three elements, like we very often do in this movie, it's hard. It's hard, but if you shoot it right, it works.
Yeah. This is an example of where once again, we're paying homage to some of the earlier films where we wanted to, Saw 2 has like this very ochre kind of yellow, and we use that in some of these, Scene 89, which we just discussed and looked at earlier. But I wanted to kind of bring it back to some of the early, like the greens that were used in the earlier, earliest films. And once again, how do I do that in a way that makes sense within this singular environment? Well, as the trap starts, things change and shift, and so we were able to kind of play this trap with like more of a green and blue. And honestly, like that was a conversation I had with Anthony and Kevin, and really Kevin kind of like talked a lot about his hopes and desires, and so we were able to kind of bring that to the table and play that out.
Well, and we wanted to emulate the film look because Saw 1 through 6 was shot on 35 millimeter film, and it has a quality to it that I miss, even though I never want to shoot film again because it's just such a freaking nightmare. But, I think between the way you shot it and the way you colored it, it looks a lot like the older Saw. And we could have made it look more grainy. I think we found a good balance. I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, that's... Yeah, and one of the fun things actually for me on this was, so I own like a little it's prosumer camera, like a little Blackmagic, but a lot of these little like flash cuts like that. I had 2 operators when we were shooting this trap, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna get out there and shoot some like little flash frame, like 6 frames a second, stuff. And I was using a zoom lens, and I was pulling my own focus, and
it was huge. It saved these scenes.
Yeah, it's just so much fun, and to be able to get that sort of material and also be able to play in the in the playground, because once you're cutting into people's brains and stuff, like that's where the fun shit is.
Yeah, a lot of energy with those shots.
Yeah, and with the films that were shot on actual film, we would start and stop the camera to create those light leaks that make everything flare out. And we didn't try to emulate that per se, but I think everything that you did with the third camera.
Yeah, I did lens whacking. Where I was like
you went
pulling the lens
totally
off
crazy.
the barrel and zooming in
it's
at
huge.
the same
It's going to
time.
there's a nice spurt of it coming up.
And also, here's some love.
Here, that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah.
it feels like film.
A lot of good fractured effects action going on here.
Oh yeah, they even had like a pump inside the brain itself
It
to.
was all very real. Look at.
Yeah, see, so you I don't think you can really tell when we're seeing his real head versus the
No, it's
the
awesome.
prosthetic head. It really just.
I think the
it was
band really
seamless.
helped a lot.
I never thought we'd be able to show it so much. Like that looks like the guy,
I mean, this
and it's
is
him standing next to a
Right.
dummy with his real hand.
I mean, this is I mean, I love this trap. I know that everyone has their own favorites.
I think this is in the
was-
top 3 for me
Yeah. I was.
for this film.
It's in the top 7
Yeah.
for this film for me.
Yeah. Hugely keen.
I know you love all the other. I'm just saying I have
You
my
motherfucker.
favorites. That's cool.
Well, and also speaking of the Catholic imagery, I mean,
Yes.
what's more Jesus than this fucking
You know, we
crown
gotta
of
love
thorns?
that.
The
You
crown
know,
of thorns.
and maybe a little bit of comeuppance for the Aztecs. I don't know.
And
Maybe.
you guys haven't heard the music for this,
And here
but
we go.
subtly there's
Dun,
some like
dun, 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 dun.
some Mayan chanting when he dies here. Oh, this is grim. Oh, and our poor Oscar, our poor stunt guy, he got
Yeah.
He got it pretty bad in
He
this
made
scene.
it through though.
Yeah.
he made it.
This was one of
And
the,
there we go. That
yeah.
lighting gag.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that. I really appreciated that. That finality to it. You know.
Sometimes I feel so dirty watching these
I think
hideous scenes,
that's
but
the
on the
value.
other hand, like I said, you've done a good job if people are just feeling desolate or throwing up or passing out.
Yeah. I hope so many people throw up.
Please throw up, audience.
I mean, I threw up actually on this set, but that was from food poisoning.
That was intense.
So not less fun.
All right,
But-
here's one of the many hugs in Saw X. We definitely have the world record for
Kisses.
hugs in a Saw film.
Yeah.
And kisses too, yeah.
Yeah, I think we own the record for kisses.
Her father's real.
Saw, but with heart.
I'm dying.
But actually, in reality, I do think like we had this really beautiful opportunity to, John has never been the main character of a Saw movie, so I do think we had this really amazing opportunity to be able, to like give fans and also ourselves, like, and all, you know, just the audience, this moment with John where they're able to see him, you know, and be able to see Tobin Bell play this character in a really dramatic and powerful way for almost 2 hours, where he's our main focus.
That's right. And you know, once you get to know Tobin, there's a part of John Kramer that's him.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
even though he's, you know, Tobin himself is the nicest guy in the world, but he's channeling so much of his own character when he's creating the integrity side
The
of,
logic.
of John Kramer. You know what I
The
mean?
logic.
The logic and you know, John Kramer he's not a killer in his own mind, and Tobin lives and breathes that philosophy that I don't think he sees himself as a guru or anything like that, but
Billy.
he definitely has an intensity to him that Tobin lives.
Yeah, I mean, there's a quiet humanity to him.
That's right.
That and truly the most like generous and kind and caring person. And yeah, it's an amazing collaborator and someone that's, you know, it really inspires you to do your best work because he's doing his best work too.
So poor Gabriella. I remember when she walked up to me with her full burn makeup on, and I was just like, wow, you look like a pepperoni pizza.
There you
Because
go.
she didn't. I just ate a pepperoni pizza 10 minutes ago, so
Yeah.
I know what I'm talking about. And then, yeah, I love that she smashes the recorder, and now John just rolls with it and goes live. We've never seen that in a Saw Trap before.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
And some pretty amazing camera work in this scene. My God, this was hard.
I mean, that's all. This shit is actually all Edgar Luzania, my B camera, and also Oso. Like by this point, he was on the project and was our B camera operator, and Edgar had stepped up to A cam and just really ran our Technocrane team extraordinarily well. Like, so grateful to have him.
I would say every day on every film by 11 in the morning, I think, oh my God, this is the day we fail. But this scene was like, oh, this is really the day we fail, because it was just so hard to get the camera way up in the sky in these positions, and
the stunt department.
Absolutely.
Everybody.
it was hard, but everybody pulled it off.
I mean, I think my favorite shots in some way, weirdly, in this scene are actually these like Jaws-esque, like intimidating close-ups of the X-ray machine itself.
Right, yeah,
Like, they're just terrifying.
yeah, it's neat. And she, again, Renata just was up there for hours and hours and hours doing this. I would never be an actor. I'll be histrionic, but I would never be an actor.
One of the things I had never done on a movie before that we did on this was our last day was just inserts, and like being able to kind of fill out every scene that, you know, with all of these pieces that are essential pieces. You have to see like the bone marrow close-ups, and you know, even this like the hammer close-up, or
Right.
like the prosthetic of the foot being
Yep.
smashed.
Yes.
Those are essential pieces.
So many details that you need to tell the story.
In fact, I think the last shot we did on this movie was boiling an egg under
Yeah,
red
for her
light.
face.
The whites of an
The
egg.
omelet,
Yeah. No.
Danielle
All those
Cosio.
connective components were so important.
So I don't know if it would ever be noticed in 1,000 years, but so Amanda has released Parker, and when we start this scene, you've got the camera slowly tracking back and forth around John, where it's showing Parker standing behind Amanda and John, and it's concealing and revealing him in a subtle way, and then at the end of the scene, it tracks in a way that shows that Parker's no longer standing there, right? And then suddenly he jumps out with the gun. It was a thing we tried. It's there, but it's subtle. It's subtle as
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I remember doing it on the day. Do I remember it when I saw watching the movie? I don't know.
I didn't think about it even as I edited the scene. So, but still, it's there.
Well, I remember you asked.
Yeah, I always remember these inserts and the prosthetic foot and the prosthetic hand,
one
and
of the
how
thing-
we did the test to make sure that it would really snap through.
We
Remember the
te-
pre-test, and
We tested
thank
this scene
God.
so many times.
And then you have to have the stunt department and her up in the air and working with the light and the light tracking over and her makeup, and it's just like a lot of stuff.
One of the things I worried about a lot was that, again, we had to shoot all the stuff of John and Amanda in the control room before we shot all the traps. And so I was very concerned that the audience would be like, why aren't we seeing John and Amanda in the shot with Gabriella here, because she's so close to them? Hopefully it's not a
I didn't have an
concern.
issue with that. I'm glad we put that graphic on that light. Remember that little sort of
Oh, the
1960s style?
screen?
Yeah.
If we lost, like if there was an electromagnetic pulse and the movie got deleted from the lab before it came out, and we had to reshoot it, could we do it?
Uh-huh. That was great. I love that.
I like the stages of evil of Synnöve Lund's character Cecilia, where it's like, okay, we learned she scammed John, but she's like, my father can help you, and then, she's concerned for Gabriella, then she kills Gabriella, and then she puts a little boy in a bloodboarding trap.
She's,
Like there's some progression to
there's
the
a
character.
new villain in horror. Cecilia.
I mean, we just had some people with great fucking faces.
Now move.
So this shot actually took quite a bit of rehearsal
Yeah.
to pull off, but I
Look
was
at
so in favor of it because it's the start of the third act.
Yeah, and it
And-
wasn't. We had the camera. We had the crane for
Yeah.
something, and I can't remember what. And then I'm like, well, if we got the crane, let's
Yeah.
do this as a
I think we had
crane.
4 or 5 crane days or whatever, so we had to make use of every single one. Keep the movie interesting visually.
Thought you forgot about me.
Not a chance. I'd die for you, baby.
Then the movie just becomes them kissing for an hour and it ends.
They did have to kiss probably 25 times.
Well, this goddamn scene took us forever.
This
Well,
was the
there's
other
a
one.
lot of input from.
Yeah,
different-
there were a lot of ideas about how
There you go. I like that.
how it should go, but again, it was a situation where we just needed so many different camera angles to tell the story.
Yep.
Right, and it just wound up being really hard. And we'd shot so much of it, but we hadn't gotten Synnöve's angles. Where we're looking down at her from John's perspective after shooting for 10 hours, and then I was talking to Synnöve, and then a look came across her face, and she said, oh my God, we still have all that fucking shit to do. And I'm like, you mean your stuff?
Your scene?
But, obviously she was fantastic when
No,
we
I
did
think-
it. But,
You know what?
it's-
She's gonna be so pleased at the end when she
think
sees
so.
all of this. She's a very believable villain.
But different actors have different feelings about.
Yeah.
I want to do my close-ups first, or I want to do
Sure.
the wide shots first, so I can build to the close-ups. And sometimes you just don't have the circumstance dictates how you do things.
I told you Parker would break the rules. Failed your test, asshole.
We need to get her to a hospital.
I mean, one of the challenges of this was just, once again, like, how do you deal with the different height?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
And how do you shoot that? And even the fact that you guys built in like faux walls that we could pull out and shoot through for
Oh yeah,
certain
did we ever?
pieces.
We ended,
I don't think
a
we
little
did
bit
it
of that? No?
except for when we were doing the blood
yeah,
boarding.
it's okay. We had it available.
Yeah.
No, we
But
used
yet
it though when
made
we wanted
full
to.
use
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, as needed.
But yeah, not only are some of the, like Synnöve's over 6 feet tall, and not only do you have different
And in heels.
heights, but and in heels, but you've got people standing on the platform. It just means you have to shoot a whole lot of fucking shit, to use her words.
But
to
this
make the
is the
scene work.
theatrical kind of component, it's so theatrical with the staircase and him up there.
Yeah, sure. No, it was the way to do it. But and this is also where 2 cameras and sometimes 3 is essential, because you have to be shooting multiple things simultaneously. There isn't enough time in the day to get all the coverage you need. Like, look at all that. Like that, you had to do that, and you had to do it from the other side. You had to do it from the other side.
Yeah.
I like the little power fist here. Yeah. I don't know how, but we're going to get through this, Amanda. Except I do know how,
Tell me,
because
John.
I'm John Kramer.
You've been doing this for a very long time, haven't you? How did I start?
All right, here's some of Sonobe's most classic moments.
Don't flatter yourself. I just had a lapse in judgment. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. For a guy as smart as you are, John, you kind of overplayed your hand here, wouldn't you say?
You even give a shit that all your friends are dead because of you?
Friends. Not friends. They were loose ends, sweetheart. Nothing but loose ends.
There's a lot of
You wanna know what I thought?
stuff we had to delete from the edit. My God, including in this part of the scene. We shot some flashbacks to back in the operating theater
You did me a favor.
that showed that Parker was working with her the whole time, and yeah, it's a shame. Again, watch the deleted scenes, folks, if you're interested, because there was a lot of really nice stuff that wasn't cut out because it was bad. It just wasn't essential to, and the movie had to be under 2 hours. So there you have it.
Something that we haven't really discussed, but we should bring up is, we wanted everybody to have their own sense of style with the costume design, and we made choices where we wanted it to be fashionable. We also wanted to be careful with colors in the different environments. We wanted to show how, we had this white medical look, and then later on we see a reveal of Cecilia in black. So I just wanted to bring up costume design because it was so important. And in addition to that, we have this challenge of blood, right? Especially with this upcoming scene with the bloodboarding. So I just think that that's something that we should just, bring up, and how fortunate we were to collaborate, and integrate our costume design. Oh, nice.
Damn visual effect. It won't look like that for the people watching it. And, this is one of my favorite parts of the movie because it's undercutting John Kramer's infallibility so much. This fucking asshole. You know what I mean?
Right, sure.
It's like, this is John being caught out. And even though he more or less has a plan for how all this goes down, he also screws up. He
Sure.
screws up in this movie a lot. He gets scammed. He never sees that Cecilia's going to bring the kid into the trap. He fucks up, and I love that she calls him out for it.
Nice note. There you go. But overall, yeah, I just think that makes him human to screw up the way he does.
And, frankly, making your supervillain human would never be a natural, desire,
No.
I think, or a smart thing to do.
Sure.
But in the case of this movie, I think it was the right call.
And it's terrible.
And it's because Tobin's such a good actor.
He
You know what I
is.
mean? That you actually really like to see this side of him, I think. Again, nobody's seen this movie but except us, but I think it works.
The boy is innocent.
Exactly. So if you let him die, it's all
I can't believe that the powers that be let us put a kid in a saw trap.
Well, it's the first time we ever see John Kramer in a saw trap. So this is
Well, that's true too.
That's a
I
big
can't believe they
deal.
let us do that either. But you know, just so the world knows, this kid was thrilled to death to be in this movie and to be in this position of
Covered
being in a
in
trap.
heaps
like,
of
my
blood.
God, like you couldn't put enough blood on that little boy, on Jorge. He was such a trooper. Oh my God, I love that.
And somehow you managed to get an R rating out of this.
I think that the MPA was just like, oh my God, if we don't give it an R rating, we're going to have to watch it again and again.
I will cut his throat.
It was Tobin's idea on the spot to say, what if I grab Cecilia? And I was
great.
like, okay. And we did it. And it was a whole moment that he created that obviously we went with and totally improvised.
Oh, that's great. I actually didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it makes him seem so powerful, and also like it's still his choice,
Yeah. It
you
was,
know. And
brilliant.
yeah, it contrasts with like the, you know, his like concern about this child
Sure.
versus his own needs.
And it spikes her intensity a lot. Like, look how pissed off she is now. It's fantastic.
Carlos. No hala.
Can't believe we poured blood on a little boy. It's just so wrong.
Turn it on, Parker, and let's go.
Kind of like the 60s Batman series, where it's like, okay, we've got Batman and Robin in the traps. Let's leave. But you get your influences where you get them.
Well, here we go.
Obviously, this scene concerned us a lot
Yeah,
in
but
development.
I'm
It's
very
like,
happy.
how are we going to do it?
I'm very happy with the interactive lighting and the chains being pulled, and it feels real.
I mean, that stuff all worked great. It was the blood itself. I just didn't know. I just didn't know if it would ever work. I hope it does. I think it does.
Here's our giallo.
That's
I
right.
really wanted that. We've been going through so much of this like ochre kind of, you know, sort of gross yellows, and I did want the blood to really read, and it just was going to read better in this colder, bluer light, and I felt like it would kind of thematically bring us back sort of full circle in the movie. So I was really excited for us to be able to do this, and like that red up light and
I
all
love
that sort
it.
of stuff is just
It made me so
so
happy.
giallo.
It was my happy moment.
Yeah. Although I didn't get to do a second take, even though I had a light set up in the background that was accidentally not on in that shot, but we had to move on. So it goes.
There you go.
I mean, that's
It's not
just great. Oh, you know,
Waterboarding, it's bloodboarding.
I mean, literally one of the funniest moments for me was like we had our B camera operator had the camera set up on the wrong nozzle when we started.
Right, we had two
rolling
cameras,
this.
two cameras shooting the blood coming out of the nozzle, and one of them the blood comes out, and the other it doesn't. It's like, what the hell's going on?
Well, we have
It's,
to. We have,
it's time
It's
conjuncted.
funny.
yeah, but look at how we talked about the seamless
Yeah.
quality of the stunt people
Yeah.
and how that all worked out. That was just amazing.
And we did get to reshoot some pieces of this.
That's true. That
like,
made a big difference.
Yeah, on our insert day, and that
Insert day was great
made
day.
a huge difference. I mean, this was me taking that same little prosumer camera and mounting it onto the seesaw, and it just becomes
Right, so it moved with him, and it
yeah,
and thank you for letting your camera get exposed to
Always.
that much blood.
yeah, always, yeah. No, I mean it's essential for the scene.
And even these angles of Carlos, not that one, but the one where you really see his face as he's freaking out. That was all stuff that we wouldn't have had if we hadn't done that bonus shoot. And I didn't even intend to have Carlos there that day, but he was there, and it's like, oh, you know, jump on the old seesaw and get some blood on your face again. And he was like, sure.
I mean, I don't want to be put through this. I think that's something that I love so much about Saw is like you do end up asking yourself like, what would I be able to bear? What would I go through in order to live?
Well, I think not even attempted to save myself in any of these traps.
Do is push the lever. Sacrifice the king.
This involved a myriad of monitors and all sorts of timing and cueing, and for John Kramer it all works fantastically. For us it involves all sorts of
I mean, that's
gadgetry.
what I mean. If I had to do it again, I just don't think I could. I don't know how I would psychologically, I'll make more movies that will be just as hard, but
Here's another kiss.
Yeah, this is just
Número dos.
the Saw kiss.
oh, and here's where we do the lighting change as she pulls the bag out.
Yeah, which
I would like to say something about that.
Yeah.
I'm told by my friend Nick Matthews, we need 50 of these rotating lights. Maybe in the next couple of days.
They were
Yeah.
so noisy.
I'm like, 50? Are you insane? 50? I didn't say that. I said, hey, let's go get a Corona. But in the end, 50 was really what we needed.
I was
I'm
like,
so
I want
happy.
them every fucking where.
50 red lights.
They were so
That's a
noisy.
T-shirt.
We had to re-record all the dialogue because they were
What's
so
so
loud.
funny is we just you guys re-greased them,
And we're like,
they were
okay, let's
fine.
get them, boys.
They were fine.
And then we just greased them up because they were, we were trying to save a little bit of money. And so we got all these lights. And then when we turn them on, they go, ee, 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 ee. But then with a little bit of grease, everything was great.
So I really liked when we filmed Sinove and Parker having their realization moment that we brought in the circular dolly track that was first
Yeah.
established in the Saw series by the Amanda Head trap in Saw 1, but we put it around them in a not a trap scene, but with the zoom lens on the camera to make those little energy bursts as they're having their realizations. That makes me very happy.
Yeah, there was a lot of
yeah.
energy on that.
That was something we really wanted to bring back. We really wanted to make sure that we had these stutter cuts and these sort of flash frames and these kinds of, this like under-cranked sort of thing.
Yeah, it's the visual language of Saw, and I think some of the more recent Saw movies were trying to get away from that and be like a normal movie, but
No.
we didn't want to be a normal movie. We
We
wanted
want
to
to be old
Saw.
school.
That's
old
right.
school.
Yeah, I've always seen, I always saw Saw as like if Seven was a Marilyn Manson music video or something,
That's a
like
good way to
just
look at it.
fucking exclamation
Yeah.
points everywhere.
For sure. This is definitely the most heartwarming moment in all of Saw.
A warrior.
Okay.
I hope. Or it's the stupidest, biggest fuck up in the entire Saw saga. So here's
Yeah.
where we get into these little,
No
these little
heartwarming,
spinny,
just sadness and violence.
Diego.
And this is part of a
that scene was
deleted
like 8
scene.
minutes long,
Yeah,
and it's down to one shot.
yeah, full scene. Just like, well, we'll just use this piece. But it's cool.
Able to find the man you asked for.
There he is, Casas Mandalore, in voice alone.
But Parker Sears,
We used the operating theater for all those scenes, which was kind of fun.
In the script, it was dark room.
That's right.
I mean, you've been cutting these movies for a while, Kevin, and I feel like some of what makes these so distinctive is these kinds of moments, these reveal moments where it's this montage style taking you through portions of the movie, and it's so effective.
Well, it's hard but fun to do, and there's it's all about finding a kind of rhythm. And at first it's like, well, I don't want to do the same thing that I did in the last movie, but then I realized actually I do want to do the same thing. So it's like, hello,
here we
Diego,
go.
boom, I want to play a game, bam,
Yeah.
Here
we go.
There's a precision to the editing rhythm that I really enjoy in some movies.
I mean, I know something you said when we were shooting the traps was that the setup is actually a literalist approach. Like, you have to sort of set the stage in order to let the audience in on what the stakes are.
Right, and because it's in the mind of John Kramer, you need to do it with a kind of clarity, even though it's it's very energetic and chaotic at the same time. You have to hide clarity and chaos within each other, and it's hard. It's hard, but it's what defines the Saw style, I think.
Yeah.
Only one can survive.
I love that we shot this sequence probably 5 times with stunt actors, thinking, well, just in case Sonobe and Steven can't pull it off. I don't think except for the stab itself, we just used the real actors. They did such a good job in this fight.
Which is great, except that I got COVID from the stunt.
Yeah, that's true.
Stunt
This is the day we all got
that's
COVID. Those were the days.
This all melded together in such a beautiful way. I actually didn't think through. I mean, I knew I wanted to use like reds and ambers and stuff, but it ends up in this like kind of yellowy orange that's just like.
Yeah, it's nice. And our original plan was to have yellow, have the
Yeah.
gas itself be clearly yellow, and
Yeah.
we couldn't technically do it, and then VFX we couldn't afford to do it, but I think it works just fine.
Yeah. I mean, we know there's a gas being poured into the room, and it's clearly like
Not good.
Yeah. But it is fun to see these characters like sort of at their wits' end and reveal like the reality of who they are.
Sure. Yeah, they're pretty bad at this point.
I mean, there's just a like total self-preservation that kicks in.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good eyeball acting, Steven.
Yeah, die for me.
So if there's a Saw 11, I like to think that Cecilia will be back, but at this point, we don't know what that movie would be. But she's going to be pretty
She'll be pretty
evil.
baked on. One portion of her body will be completely gnarly.
Here's more heartwarming hugs and stuff.
Which we actually did shoot this pretty close to the end of the shoot.
Oh, yeah. Last day.
Let's get you home, Carlos.
Here we go.
Saw fans, you either love or hate the way we end this movie, because from my perspective right now, I just don't know.
Well, something that I really loved that I knew you wanted was like, you know, many Saw films end with
Here
the
we go.
opening of a door or the closing of a door.
Yeah. So this
And
was supposed
you
to be an inversion.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic.
And to me, this is the send off of John Kramer, and he's on his way to John Kramer heaven, you know, because we know he's only going to be alive for a couple more months at the most, and you know, why do it with the door slam?
It's the beginning of a new chapter.
So the movie's not over yet.
That's right. There's
Yeah.
more.
We still have.
There's definitely more. And I know that a lot of Saw fans are probably annoyed at this point that they haven't seen Casas Mandalore, because it's been intimated that he's going to be in the movie. And then we do show him, and I think it's a fun scene, but it doesn't answer questions about did he really die at the end of Saw 7? But you know what? That's what Saw 14 is for. Saw 14 picks up where Saw 7 ends, and all will be revealed.
So hang in there. I'm just, yeah, it was just such a, you know, it's such a unique chance to be able to shoot this in Mexico and make this in Mexico, and to have it be a part of the story, and to have all these fantastic actors be able to come together, and all this fantastic crew, and
Yeah, I mean, it gave the movie so much character to be in Mexico.
Yeah.
You know? It really was fantastic. Oh, here
Oh,
we go.
here we go.
So those shots of the lights
Yeah, we had-
are the footage from Saw
Sure.
1, because
But we
just-
replicated this.
you
this
made the
bathroom.
ceiling. We could have done it, but
We
we
replicated
didn't.
this bathroom. I'm really proud of my team, Oscar Orsi and Rika Davila and everybody involved, and they did a wonderful
It's kind
job.
of mad that we did the whole build of the set for just this little tiny scene.
I think the
but
main
you know
thing
what?
is just tone and mood, and that's all that matters to me. I don't really. All I care is that people feel it, and they did.
Yeah, it's
So
it's
that's
fun.
the way for me. I always look at the totality of the movie.
It's tonally, kind of just wacky that we do this and that we end on the Batman the 60s TV show spin into
Sure.
into Michael Beecher, but I think it's fun.
Because everybody was wondering, where is he?
I think we
What
got
happened?
3 takes of that shot.
I know.
It's really complicated to do,
Uh,
but we got it.
I think the only easy thing on this movie was the intestine scene,
Which we thought was going to be
which we
brutal.
thought was going to be hard.
Oh, watch out.
And then it's just a shot of a Kodago bottle right there.
Well,
Them drinking after this starts.
I've been told that Código's going to pay for a premiere in Mexico City. We'll see.
That would be awesome.
Whatever it takes to get us back.
Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice. So,
Alrighty.
yeah, there's 4.5 minutes of credits
Chris,
where
that's a bunch.
you can give your special thanks. So for this, we cut together various pieces of Charlie Clouser's score to
Okay.
play under the credits, and I think it's
great.
pretty fun. He did a really remarkable job. He knew that the first third of this film, when John is getting seduced by Cecilia, as it were, needed to have a different tone. There wasn't really room for that industrial music
Sure.
palette that we've been used to, and Nine Inch Nails, it has a tender side. Not that he is just Nine Inch Nails, but he had to explore that and and do other things. And the sequence where John pulls the bandage off and realizes he's been scammed, there's a little bit of an homage to that original Hello Zep piece of music from Saw 1, but it's its own unique thing, and I just think he did some really nice stuff in the film.
Can't wait to hear it.
It's
Yeah, you're gonna like it.
I mean, the movie deals with some really, with real issues. Like it's a real thing where people go through medical trauma and are taken advantage of. And so to be able to play with that anger, that rage, that sense of what's been stolen from them.
Betrayal.
And that betrayal, is like a real thing. And I think this movie just... One thing I loved about the script, and you saw it come through with all of these actors that we had the great fortune of working with, was they were able to tap into these really raw, genuine emotions. And I think for me, when I watched the movie the first time, I was just so blown away by that and taken by that. Even though I got the chance to be on set with them and make it, I was able to watch it with fresh eyes. And
Yeah. It still affects me sometimes when particularly when I watch it with an audience. I can sort of feel the emotions anew, and it's pretty amazing. Thematically for me, this film is not as on the nose as Saw 6, which is explicitly about, healthcare, corruption, and that sort of thing. But at the same time, this film is coming out in an era where it's obvious that people feel that people in prominent positions of power feel okay with lying and conning and doing bad things that are very destructive and have impacts on our lives in really personal ways. And so I hope that a little bit of that feeling comes across in this movie, even if we're not being heavy-handed about it.
Well, it was such an honor to watch you work as a director and to see your work as an editor. I learned a lot in the process.
You guys, you made the movie, man. There were definitely times where I was like, is this even gonna happen? Is it even gonna happen? And you pulled us through, and you did fantastic work on the movie as well.
Well, we appreciate you, and we appreciate this collaboration.
Well, if there's going to be a Saw 11, it's going to be us.
I
It's
hope
the
so.
people in this room.
I hope
Get
so.
ready for more gore, guys.
'Cause, otherwise, I don't even know what it is. All right, thanks everybody for listening to this. I hope that it was entertaining and informative to you. It was a really great experience to make this film and to work with these guys.